What do you think about when you think about North American cuisine? Maybe you think about French fries, tater tots, Thanksgiving turkey, the Wendy's 4 for 4. But out of all of those just different types of food, what is the true king, the true cream of the crop of North American cuisine? Or rather, what is the NA special? Well, in today's video, we're about to find out because we are going to witness today the greatest chef of our generation, Setsuko, who's about to cook up and whip up one of the most exquisite boards in the most ridiculous fashion we're about to ever see. And he did this on the world stage. This game, this VOD was taken out of day 2 of the World Championship. And this is just absolute tomfoolery. We're in for quite a ride. Let's get on to today's video. So here we are in Setsuko's POV from day 2 of the World Championship stage. Now, actually, at the time of recording this, day 2 is actually still ongoing. This is the second game of the day today. But, I mean, this game was so fucking unbelievable that I just had to make a commentary over this while game 3 is playing in the background on my third monitor. Now, you might notice on the right-hand side, again, this is on the world stage, so we do have a lot of incredible names on the, in the lobby in general. We got Wei Iverson, one of the best of North America, Liluo, and I believe Lilo is the only Chinese representative. Hayden, I believe, is EMEA. Shikamen from Japan. Tech Summers from Latin America. Bintum from Korea. And Demon from also Korea. So, really strong players in the lobby. Bintum and Liluo and Wei Iverson, I believe, are the favorites out of this lobby in particular. But, I mean, everybody in this lobby is incredibly great at the game. We're in for a ride. Now, we are starting off with a Bobo chain start and a very just normal econ start, if you will. Nothing too crazy, nothing too, oh my god, you know what I mean? So, lack of a better word. We do have prep Mech Prime Crest Metabolic Accelerator. Mech Prime Crest is really only viable when you are going to play Milk Monkey. With a Titan Slam, it's actually doable, except you don't have any monkeys, no Wukongs. If you don't know the Milk Monkey comp, I did make a video about it a little while back. It is a Chinese comp that is a for fun comp, but can surprisingly work out even in the best of the best when it comes to these kinds of lobbies. We do have Metabolic, which is understandable and takeable from this spot, but I believe that in general from this spot, you actually would rather take Prep. It actually depends on your playstyle. If you'd rather just not think too heavily on it, Metabolic's the way to go. It's kind of the lazier option. Prep is definitely the higher skill ceiling option, and the reason why is this. The way you play Preparation is that you basically say, listen, my board is delayed by 4 turns. Now, what does this mean? Prep, the way that it works, right? We know you put your units on your bench, they gain prep stacks, that have 4 stacks, that are max stacks, they gain extra stats. These stats are very valuable, incredibly valuable. And actually, prep actually has one of the highest caps when it comes to capping out your board in terms of a gold hero augment power, because the stats on prep are actually quite insane. You get, I believe, oh man, I really should have, sometimes when you make videos, you think of really good points to make, and then you just forgot to prep those points because, for lack of a better word, we don't have prep. But anyways, you gain 4% AD AP every round, so you get 16 AP AD plus 4 times 35. That is 140 HP for all of your units, which, again, it doesn't sound like a lot, and when you're starting off, these stats can sound very little, but think of it this way. Basically, if you're able to prep your entire board gets to play with, I believe it's like a BF and a half, an extra rod and a half, and an extra belt and a half, I believe. Because belt, I believe, is 160 HP, so maybe it's just one belt. Or it's about 100 HP. I don't remember. I'm not a very big stats guy. But what I can tell you is that you're basically playing 3 extra components on every single one of your units. And that adds up. It's a lot of stats. So, prep, again, one of the highest caps, but you have to play like 4 turns behind. And it's also very difficult to manage your economy because you have to balance between, do I want to prep these units? Do I not want to prep these units? Do I make economy at this threshold? Do I not make economy at this threshold? It varies. Here we can see that even though it was very possible for him to prep the Infinity Team units and to actually use prep to its full capacity, potentially, he actually just decides to sell and make 10 here, which is a very interesting decision here because, again, it was very possible for him to play Infinity Team, but I believe he scouted the lobby and noticed that somebody else was potentially playing it, so he decided it's not even worth trying to prep the Infinity Team units when I'm going to get contested for it. So instead what he does is that he just makes 10 here and levels to 5 and notices that he has sort of an interesting potential duelist game going on here because he can prep the Vayne, he has Rudans, he has Bow, definitely leaning towards AD instead of AP because normally when you get a lot of bows, it's more AD reliant than AP, because the only AP unit that can utilize the bows is TF. So whenever you're given a lot of bows, you should assume it is an AD line. Now you might be wondering, why didn't he Titan Slam? Titan Slam might seem okay in certain situations, and at the world stage, you might want to mitigate as much HP loss as possible, so Titan Slamming might have made sense in this scenario, but Titans is only really usable on Warwick and Belveth. Anybody else I can really think on top of my head? I mean, technically Urgot, technically Mordekaiser can kind of use it, it's not very great, but I mean, to be honest, Mordekaiser shouldn't even really have Titans on it in general. He just wants to cast immediately, do a lot of damage. So Titans isn't even really a great slam here. It's very not versatile. Plus, it just, not a lot of units can use it. Sumira can't use it very well. Vayne can't use it very well. You're sort of locking yourself into a lot of very finite options. And especially for something like Warwick, which requires Laser Core, which we clearly don't have. Definitely not the way to go. Here, as we can see, very good use of his fundamentals here. Making sure he's prepping all the units that he knows he wants to play on 3-1. So he is playing a very weak board actually on Krugs, and actually one of the cheapest boards that he can do while still trying to maintain these economic thresholds of at least 30, ideally 40, but 30 if it's okay. You can notice he actually doesn't make 40 here because he knows that on 3-1, now he's actually given the opportunity to play around 4 duelists, and actually leveling here makes a lot of sense, because by leveling here, you actually are able to play 4 duelists and Locket Slam and play a lot of tempo. So as we talked about before, Prep is one of those augments, again, very difficult to play because you're playing 4 turns behind, but even though Setsuko's playing 4 turns behind, he's not, you might notice, he's not utilizing the full value of preparation, but that's okay because he's making up for it by just streaking. The amount of HP that he preserved because he streaked is worth more than the prep stacks that he would have received had he had prepped every single unit that he possibly received and tried to maximize the value out of the augment. Again, it's a balance game. TFT is this push and pull, this sort of, you know, ecosystem of harmony, if you will. Anyways, I am just sounding like a moron. Here we are given scoped weapons, thrill, and rich get richer. Now, we've talked about this actually in the Dish Soap VOD that I did a very long time ago. It was one of the first gameplay commentaries I ever did. When we are given a streak, a 5 win streak, technically 6 win streak now, we're level 6, what do we want to do? We want to keep the tempo going, push the tempo. So what is the best augment to take from this spot? It's actually a little difficult. Scoped weapons and throw the 100, the clear 2 winners here, right? Rich get richer doesn't make sense because, again, we're trying to play for our tempo, trying to keep our streak alive. And we're definitely in a position to do so. Scoped weapons, throw the hunt, what is the difference between the two? Scoped weapons opens up units like Belveth, Warwick, very great with scoped weapons, Jax as well, potentially. But again, we're not really playing around brawlers, we're playing around duelists. So you might actually lean towards Thrill of the Hunt. But as we may notice, we have Runan's Bow and a Lock and Slam. Thrill is a bit interesting here. Thrill has the higher cap with Warwick for sure, and we do have a Yasuo that is prepping on our bench, but the pivot's very expensive and very difficult to pull off. We definitely want to try to lean Belveth if possible, and yes, Belveth can also use Thrill as well. So quite honestly, you could go both ways, but Scoped Weapons actually has a bit more of a higher cap in general, because as you may or may not know, Scoped Weapons, Warwick, and Belveth, you basically don't have to build a GA on your carry. You are actually sort of freeing up one extra item slot onto your carry, which is why, even though Thrill of the Hunt actually does spike her board more in this scenario, and actually, personally speaking, I probably would have taken Thrill in this spot, Scoped Weapons is a viable option here, and it's a very difficult decision to make. Again, I don't blame him for taking Scoped Weapons, but for him to like idle and not really know which one to take in this spot, it's very understandable. Thrill definitely is stronger here, and you know, it's hard to sort of garner as much value as you can out of your augments, and like, you look at the positioning of this now, he's trying to garner as much value as he can out of Scoped Weapons, but like, is this positioning correct? Is it correct? It's hard to say. It's hard to say because you're sort of clumping your front line backwards, so now any AoE is actually going to affect your Vayne as well, and it is still stage 3, so it's very possible that because it's still stage 3, there isn't enough AoE or CC on the board that it would really affect the Vayne in a negative manner. It's very hard to say, though. You would definitely need a scout, but it's hard. You don't really know. Here, actually, Setsuko makes a very interesting play here. It actually levels to 7 at 3-3, which is very good use of his fundamentals. Why is this so great? He levels to 3 for 2 reasons. One, he levels to 3 because he hits a Poppy 2 in a shop. It's just a very strong unit that he can play on his board, especially for stage 3. And on top of that, he actually is able to still make 30 even if he levels to 7 here. Why is this important? He basically paid 2 to 3 extra gold to play up a Fawn to ensure his streak going to 3-5. And actually, if you do the math, It's almost like as if he didn't level. It's almost the same thing. What do I mean by this? Because let's say he didn't level and he actually loses. He loses his streak. Sure, he keeps his economy going, or rather his economy streak stops, and he actually probably loses more gold had he just not had he leveled, he probably saves more money rather than just not leveling. And keeping the streak going makes him more money than if you were to just like try to play it safe, which is actually not safe. It's actually the opposite. It's actually unsafe to not level in that spot. So it makes a really good job. In general, if you can level and you have 30 left over after your rolls and after hitting everything, you still have 30 gold left over, it's almost always a good idea to level. Again, that's something that I had mentioned in the dish soap video, because again, whenever you're playing tempo, you sort of follow these generic rules, these generic lines, these generic sort of, you know, not unspoken rules, but unspoken rules, if you will. There is a play style to it, right? This is how tempo works. Here, as we can see, he gives up both of the poppies because the Morgana gives a shred, and a Rammus 2 is just a fucking Rammus 2. This thing's a beast. On top of that, I believe it's at 3 stacks. Prep has this weird bug where you can't always see the stacks at the bottom. I really wish they would fix this at a certain point. But, I mean, I digress. Small indie company, you know the drill. Anyways, 3-6, still keeping the tempo alive, 10 streak. Now, what is the plan from this spot? That's the real question. What the fuck's the plan from this spot, right? Because we got to think about, we're not ending on Vayne, right? We're not ending on Vayne. We're definitely not ending on Duelist. What are we doing? Again, prepping the units he thinks he's going to play later on. Very, very great stuff. Very solid fundamentals. But what is the plan? The game plan is to play around Bel'Veth. We already discussed it before with scoped weapons. He sort of locks himself in with the scoped weapons choice here. But on top of that, what else is going onto the board with Bel'Veth? Well, Bel'Veth is a threat unit. I mean, obviously. But this actually is really great for us because this allows us to play flexibly. We can actually play around whatever we hit, and we can actually flex very, very hard because our carry is just one unit, threat doesn't rely on synergies. We can do whatever. So we actually have a bunch of different options. We have, I mean, it depends on what we hit. We are so far hitting a lot of threats, not a lot of mech, and not a lot of Aegis or whatever. So it's very difficult for us to really play anything else besides stuff from the spot. But as we can see here, he hits the 4/5/4 hero augment. Now you might be thinking, oh, it has to be Back for Blood. It has to be Back for Blood. It makes perfect sense to take Back for Blood in this spot because we know we're playing Bel'Veth. We know that we want to play around scoped weapons. It makes perfect sense for us to take Back for Blood. So what does Sets go do? Sure, it's a 4/5/4, but what 5 cost could we be really looking for? We have 5 duelists. I mean, we're gonna hit the both Twisted Fate augments, but then what do we do from there? Back for Blood again makes the best choice. It's so obvious it's the best choice. Actually, it's not even close. He rerolls. Okay, maybe he wants a Void Mommy. Maybe his read is that Void Mommy is better. I don't think that's the case. If we go into the stats, and I'll pull them up for you so you can see here. Void Mommy averages a 5.03. It is the worst support. I believe this actually is a contender for one of the worst support augments in the game. It's terrible. Back for Blood was definitely the correct call here. Or it should have been the correct call here. But Setsuko, in true NA fashion, looks on the left side, says, I have 5 duelists, 2 threats. The only duelist augments he can hit is TF. And nothing but threats. So what he's going to do? He's going to go out with a bang. In true NA fashion. He's going to keep re-rolling here. Hits Rising Tide and he goes, it's fucking time. What else can he hit in the spot? It has to be shiny. So he re-rolls and he takes shiny. This is the true North American special. Why is this such a North American special? Let's talk about the stats, right? 4.74. 4.74. But do you notice something interesting here? Just look at this for a second. Do you notice something interesting here? It's not the abysmal top 4 rate. That's not what I'm trying to point at you here. The interesting thing is the win percentage. 14.8%. That is oddly high for an augment with such an abysmal top 4 rate and an abysmal just in general stat. If we go back to the Bel'Veth, look at this. 10% top 4 rate, 10% win rate, 8% win rate, 45% top 4 rate, 41% top 4 rate. We are basically seeing the exact same stats coming out of Shiny, but the difference is this insane win percentage spike. Almost 15% in Masters Plus. Actually, if we go into GM Plus, 16.5% top 4 rate. The stats actually increase the higher you go. Why is this the case? It's because NA pros have sort of realized that shiny can be used from like a Mr. 100 spot. What do I mean by this? Shiny, for those of you who don't know, is Urgot's carry augment, which your strongest Urgot's ability has an extra 25% to dredge up treasure. This is the Mr. 100 augments of Mr. 100 augments. Now, what is a Mr. 100 augment? If you have tempoed all the way to 4-2 and you manage to stay Mr. 100 and your board isn't that much weaker than the rest of the lobby, you can actually take shiny. By taking shiny, this is what you're ultimately saying. You're saying, this lobby is for fun. You guys are all fucking bots. I am going to farm infinite gold, infinite components, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. As we can see here, he actually does a very good job. 4-2 immediately spikes his board because he knows his board is going to start losing tempo here, right? So he wants to either try to keep the tempo alive or at least keep his board stable enough throughout stage 5 that his econ regenerates through either his streak or through shiny. And actually, he does lose here, unfortunately. But as we'll soon see, his board is still in a very strong spot. He's got guaranteed the ace all 2, and he got all of these because at 4-2 he rolled down and sent it, which is a very, very strong and important understanding of saying, hey, my board is going to fall off. I got to spike now. Very good stuff. So here, even though we have a guarantee, naked guarantee, by the way, because we don't have defenders and we have 1 corrupted 7 threats, we're playing a full threat board, right? And again, we can do this because we knew that we were going to play around Bel'Veth. And listen, full threats, that's still a viable option. It's not a strong option, but it's a viable option. And actually, it's not strong because synergies will always outcap threats. But you know what outcaps synergies? Items and gold. So what we're saying here is that shiny, we're going to play threats. We're going to commit into just basically playing nothing but threats. Obviously hit whatever we hit. But basically playing nothing but threats and just dredge up infinite components, infinite items. And we're just going to try to go for first. Shiny is a play for first augment. It's a very unique augment in this sense where you really don't get to see it getting played in any other fashion. I cannot really think of very many augments that really say, or really scream rather, I'm playing for first, and at the same time, disrespect the shit out of the entire lobby. This is true North American fashion here. This is the true, just North American experience, the true North American personality. It screams North American in the gameplay. Not only are you saying, I'm going to win this game, you're spitting in everyone's mouth and making sure that they don't like it. They hate it. They don't care how kinky you are. You ain't a fan of this shit. This is some terrifyingly risky shit. Because guess what your win condition is? Yes, dredge up infinite items. Yes, dredge up a lot of gold. But again, your board will not cap out. Your board will not cap out harder than a board with a bunch of synergy. So your board is all in the hands of Mort Dog. And hoping that this Urgot will dredge infinite. Because if it doesn't, or if it dredges you very poor items, you might go 5th. You might go 6th. Even with this large HP lead, it's very, very possible. Because again, this augment provides no level of combat support. It's literally, you're guarding your combat power over a long period of time. Unlike these other 5-cost, 4-cost augments where like, it's like, oh, the Jin carry augment, or oh, like the Syndra support augment, right? Empowered reserves where you gain like 50, 60 AP across your whole board because you have a Syndra and a full bench, right? You're not garnering any immediate value. And it takes a lot of time to dredge up all the components you need to get to the point where your board is actually strong enough to not only compete against the Temple of the Lobby, but actually win out against everybody else. This is a disrespectful motherfucker. And he's making it work. Here, as we can see, he's now 82 gold. Well, down to 50, but because he's pumping levels here, because he doesn't give a single fuck. He is on Bel'Veth 1, trying to go level 9. Plus, I don't know if you noticed, he actually fucked up his item components here. He has a Zephyr on his Ace Soul, and he has double Runan's Titan Slam on the Bel'Veth. This is actually a mistake. I wish I had the video. I wish I had the audio recording of this VOD. I actually don't. I don't know what happened to the audio. It just didn't go through. But surprisingly enough, oh, actually, I know why. Because Setsuko plays copyrighted music on his stream. That's why I had to mute the VOD. That's duh. Anyways, he actually did state he fucked up his itemization here on the anvil. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he definitely went, holy fuck, I'm trolling. I built the wrong items. Those were his exact words, but again, I can't play it for you because the copyright music. Anyways, pushes level 9 here, and then just donkey rolls here. Basically, he's just looking for that Belvet 2. It's really the only thing that he's looking for. Belvet 2, Urgot 2, potentially Ace 3 is an option as well, because he does hit the loaded dice off of the carousel. Now, as we can see here, it's funny because even though these items are kind of whiz, it's still working out. It's still working out. Why is it working out? It's working out because prep value, which gives him extra stats. So he's, again, effectively playing up like 3 components on every single one of his units. But on top of that, he's actually slowly farming more items. It doesn't matter if your items are like that whiz. These are really not whiz. Whiz stands for worse than slot, by the way. These aren't even whiz. These are just semi-suboptimal. I mean, the Zephyr on the Ace is pretty suboptimal. But besides that, I mean, look how close these losses are. They're not even losses, really. And he's still playing with a lot of HP to spare. 48 versus 18, 9, and 6. He's guaranteed top 2 here. Just based off the math alone, he's guaranteed a top 2 here. So, at a certain point, as long as your items are like, they don't have to be perfect. But if you have like items on every single one of your units, you're going to win the game. There's just too many stats. You just have too much power built into your board that there's no chance that the opponent can ever win out. Here, he actually had the opportunity to potentially even remake this Belvet, and he just said, fuck it. I don't even need to. So what does he do? He just is now just going to donkey roll at this point, because what else can he do to really cap out his board here, right? Let's talk about it. He has the potential to go Mordekaiser 2, and then maybe start itemizing it with the Rabadons or whatever, but he actually hit the Fiddlesticks 2, so Fiddlesticks 2 makes more sense to itemize. You could make the argument, though, that backlining the Fiddlesticks is actually better in this scenario because it would be a stronger and more consistent carry than the Acel, especially because he's actually given the opportunity to potentially remake the Acel 2 here, but he doesn't. What he actually does, because he doesn't greed it, he realizes that like there's only like 2 or 3 rounds left, and his stronger board is just to play the second prepped Acel 2. Very great, by the way. Oh my god, pause. Very great positioning technique that he used here. Do you see what he did? Let's back it up a bit. Let's talk about it. Ready? Acel, he leaves in the back corner here. This makes conventional sense because ideally you want your backline carry to be in your backline, right? It makes sense. He is baiting. He is baiting the Zephyr here. And what do I mean by this? Most people, when they scout your lobby, it's a one-on-one. They see the Zephyr on a backline carry. The odds of you putting this to the front line is so low. So what Setsuko is doing, actually, is he's moving it back and forth in between the 2 spots, between these 2 Acels, and then moves it up last second. Demon has no fucking idea. And actually, by doing so, he Zephyrs the Mordekaiser, the true carry of this Laser Core board. And as we can see, it's going to pay off, because by doing so, this Mordekaiser can't cast. By the time it casts, the fight's already over. Setsuko farms and dredges infinite chests. 48-1. What else is there to do, right, from this spot? Again, we're going to see that Setsuko, again, moves this Acel back. It's very likely that Demon is not going to fall for the same trick twice. And quite honestly, that cheese actually could have worked out had Setsuko killed 1 more extra unit. But as we can see here, just decides not to Zephyr the Mordekaiser again. And I think the reason why is because he's assuming that Demon won't fall for the same shit twice. Also, that means that it's very likely that Demon will actually reposition the Mordekaiser, because he'll probably reposition last second. It won't be able to Zephyr anyways. It's a very one-time only sort of issue here. Here he takes the Gunblade because there's nothing much better to take here from the spot. Keeps Donkey rolling because he's just looking for like some level of upgrades, something to really spike his board if possible, because just because our spot looks really good doesn't mean that we're going to win out the game no matter what. Here he dices Acel because like, why the fuck not? There's really nothing else to do from the spot. But he actually decides to sell this Acel because it is kind of whiz, because then he's able to put 3 damage items onto his actual Acel carry. And then he throws in the Syndra because Syndra is technically better from this spot because she's able to just throw in extra units, which is really, really nice. Plus, you get a Zephyr cheese once again. Here, he does Zephyr the Morgana, which is very unfortunate. It's actually a 50-50 between the Morgana and the Mordekaiser here. And actually, had he had Zephyr the Mordekaiser here, I believe he actually would have won the fight. But as you can see, the Mordekaiser 2 just absolutely obliterates the board. Just completely cleans it. Now, Setsuko's down to 1 life here, which is really problematic because now it's like, okay, did we just troll the game? Did we just give away what could have been a first place for free, and trying to win out with the true North American fashion is just really the way to go? As we can see here, he actually keeps rolling down here, trying to find extra upgrades. Hits another Fiddlesticks 2, which is really, really nice to get. Has to sell the Urgot here. It just makes sense. Like 2 fully prepped Fiddle 2s. This is our board. So what can we do here to try to win out and ensure our win, right? Well, the only thing really is the Zephyr. And we know for a fact that we want to Zephyr the Mordekaiser. So what can we do? The only thing that we can do in this spot is stare at the other person's board and shuffle units. What do I mean by shuffle units? Shuffling units, which he actually doesn't do, which is very surprising. Let me put it this way. What Demon could have done, because it's easier to think from Demon's perspective. What Demon could have done here is position both his Mordekaisers. See how he positions them in opposite corners? This is actually a terrible mistake. This is actually really, really fatal. What he could have done is notice that the Garen and the Fiddlesticks have 3 items each. So what he needs to do is position both these Mordekaisers opposite of the Fiddle and the Garen. By doing so, he ensures that neither of them gets Zephyred, and he'll be in a very, very good position to try and win out the game. Now, this is where Setsuko should have shuffled his units here, because he could have shuffled, maybe even just shuffled the units 1 hex to the left, 1 hex to the right, and also shuffled his Fiddlesticks maybe to the far left, to the far right. He could have shuffled things around a little bit to increase his odds, because he knows for a fact that Demon is going to frontline both these Mordekaisers here. Demon wants these insta-casts to occur. Here, you can see that he Zephyrs the Rammus here, thank God, because by doing so, now his entire board doesn't get obliterated off the bat. Sure, the first Mordekaiser does cast, the stronger one does cast, but the thing is that when both the Mordekaisers were casting at the same time, which Setsuko identified, was when he would lose the fights, because his entire board would die just too quickly. And here, luckily enough, due to a positioning error, technically made by both sides, but actually mostly by D-Men, Setsuko wins out in true North American disrespectful fashion. What a fucking Giga Chad. Absolutely bonkers. I hope you guys stay tuned for the rest of the World's Championship, because we have incredible games going on for the rest of the game. Like, this championship is absolutely wild. I highly hope, and I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys keep tuning in for the rest of the championship. Take care, guys, and happy climbing.